Hi, good afternoon. This is Sharda Ugra here. Today, I am going to be speaking as part of the column that I've done for the Hindustan Times this week to Alun Williams, who's a reader in exercise and sport genomics at Manchester Metropolitan University's Institute of Sport. Alan, thanks so much for being here and for chatting with us at a time where there's so much of controversy and so much of debate around the FINA ruling about trans athletes. What was your response starting with when you heard about the FINA ruling?
Yes, okay, well, yeah, thanks for letting me speak about this. Yeah, the FINA ruling, because it does a couple of things. First of all, it groups two groups of people together. So it has the transgender athletes and those with DSDs. And personally, I think that's a mistake. And I think there should be separate regulations or policies for each of those groups. Having said that, the general sort of direction or thrust of the regulations in terms of trying to protect the women's category in swimming from those who have experienced male puberty and the advantage that gives when they have higher testosterone and the physical differences that makes. I do agree with the general direction of it. As I say, it's just I think it's just a shame that they grouped both groups of athletes together.
We'll get to the DSD issue in a bit. What does your study over many decades tell you about what are the parameters that you have to look at to study distinct and almost unarguable genetic advantage, even if it's in general male versus female? You're not getting into the specifics of the trans athlete situation, but what would you say are the irrefutable parameters of advantage?
Okay, so genetics is important for making everybody different in terms of how tall they are, the muscle mass they have, the endurance they have, all those kinds of things. And there are lots of different genetic markers that do that, but they are equally available or equally common within males or within females. The one genetic difference that actually distinguishes between males and females is the presence of the Y chromosome in most men, and in particular then there's a gene called the SRY gene, which ultimately means that men have higher testosterone, particularly during puberty, but also through most of their adult life. So the evidence then that ultimately the Y chromosome, but then the effect that the testosterone has on performance, there is an enormous amount of evidence that this is really important. Going way back in textbooks that I used to study when I was a student long ago, they would, the differences between men and women on average are very clear. And that's why we have separate male and female categories in sport, and that's correct. So I think it has been said, some people have suggested that, that maybe there should be just a single category. There shouldn't be male or female categories. That does not make any sense at all.
So you're saying sort of testosterone is the one marker of this genetic advantage, and by your understanding of the situation, that if you have gone past puberty as a male, it doesn't quite go away if you sort of try and lower testosterone, do all the rest of the things that are there, all the rest of the rules that they've set for trans athletes, that you don't quite lose that advantage in the sense. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, exactly. So testosterone is really important, but it's not just at a single moment in time that it's important. So, if an adult male, if a man like that lowers their testosterone, and then you measure their testosterone and it is within the normal female range, for example, that does not mean that they still do not have the physical benefits of having gone through male puberty and having had testosterone higher for a longer period of time, because they will have those benefits. They will still have a larger skeleton, longer limbs, they will be taller, they will have larger muscle mass, they will have a larger heart. At least for a period of time, they will still have more hemoglobin in their blood, although interestingly, that is one of the things that does reduce over a matter of weeks or months if someone does lower their testosterone. But that's unusual. Most of the differences remain, or at least the majority of the difference remains. So muscle mass and strength, for example, The evidence so far is that if someone does lower the testosterone for a period of time, then they might lose a few percent of their muscle mass or strength, but not as much as the advantage they have gained from having gone through male puberty in the first place. So testosterone is really important, but it's not just at one moment in time. It's throughout someone's life.
What advantage, to a lay sort of non-science person, to explain what is that advantage in terms of the percentage advantage that there is? If you had to say that that's the advantage you have, what is it in just a regular situation, and what is it even if you lower testosterone level?
In many sports like athletics and swimming and things like that, the average difference in performance between men and women on average is about 10 to 15%, something like that. But then in sports that are much more reliant on muscle mass and strength, particularly the upper body, then those differences can be up to about 50% on average. So then, as you say, the question is, well, if someone then lowers their testosterone, are those 10 to 15% differences in running or swimming performance, or the 50% difference in strength, are they, do those things reduce by that amount to sort of level the playing field? And the answer is that all the evidence so far is that is not the case. So you might lose a few percent in terms of performance and a few percent of muscle strength, but the majority would remain. So it doesn't create a sort of a fair and level playing field for trans women, for example, to be competing in the women's category in sport. There is a limitation to the research that's gone on so far, though, and that is that most of the research has not used highly trained athletes, and most of the research hasn't used sort of sport-specific measurements. So if you're interested in swimming, then you would want to measure somebody swimming, and nobody has done that yet. So there are certainly limitations to the research, but I think we can be pretty confident that even when those things are done, those differences will not be removed when someone lowers testosterone, although until the research is done, you can't be 100% sure.
Are you, just a couple of things more, are you surprised that there hasn't been enough research done on this? Because the IOC had legislated since 2004 that trans athletes could compete, and it's a complex subject. So you would logically think that people would do things and just do the science, and find out what the difference is. And why do you think this is so, that there has not been that much research?
Yeah, no, I think the sports governing bodies, in particular the IOC and some of the other federations of the major sports, with reasonably well funded and so on, that they should have been ahead of the game here and should have done their research done their research to support their policies or to develop new policies, and also in the context of societal changes where maybe it's becoming more accepted for some to be transgender and so on. So those things could have been anticipated. I can't really say why they didn't do that. Maybe they just, I don't know, limited time, limited funds, other priorities to do with anti-doping and other things. But yeah, it's a shame that they haven't done the kind of research I've been talking about, with more highly trained people, using more sport-specific measurements to really get to get a clear answer as to whether the policies they've had in place until recently, and many sports still do, of course, have policies right now as we're speaking. Many sports still have policies where a reduction in testosterone is the requirement for a trans woman to compete in female sport. And as we've just said, the evidence on that is limited. So yes, it's a shame that we're in this situation with a mix of regulations and a bit of a lack of scientific evidence.
Why do you think it's unfair then? Could you explain to us as to that DSD and trans athletes have been sort of put together in this under this rulings, and one size fits all, so like this should apply to everyone?
So I think a lot of people think like me on this, in that the regulations or policies should be should be specific to each of those two groups of people. So for transgender athletes, then their genetics is quite clear. You know, so if we are talking about trans women, where most of the debate is, then genetically they are the same as any other male. But then the question is whether the lowering testosterone somehow removes the advantage that has given them. For DSD athletes, then they are not genetically the same as male. What makes someone a DSD athlete is to have some sort of unusual genetic variation, and there's a whole range of them, and almost no two individuals are the same. So there are legitimate debates then about the biology and how much advantage, if any, different types of DSD athletes have. So there's the biological debate. And then there's the broader debate then as well about these are people. So typically we're talking about people who were recorded as being female at the point of birth, and again usually have lived their whole life in that way. And if you're going to have a policy that sort of regulates this, then it requires some really quite invasive and I would say inhumane kind of assessments to try to sort of police that boundary between the male-female category for those people. So for those reasons, you know, I think it's as I say, I think a lot of people think like me that there should be different sets of regulations for the two groups of people.
What was your response to when you heard Sebastian Coe say biology trumps gender, you know, and he made this statement almost sounding that this is it and biology has won, and all these regulations are sort of they can be applied to anyone.
Okay, I'm just pausing. So not a lot of new evidence has appeared in the last few years since Seb Coe, of course, is head of World Athletics. So not a lot of new evidence has emerged. It's just really what's happened in the last couple of years is just lots of discussion and debate. So not a lot of primary scientific evidence that is new has emerged. If World Athletics were to change their regulations, then that seems to be in response to opinion and what other federations might doing, like FINA in swimming, rather than any change in the basic scientific evidence. So, and if they change their policy without any new evidence, then both policies cannot be supported by scientific evidence. Either the one they are changing from is wrong, or the one they're changing to is wrong, because they cannot both be supported by the same scientific evidence. Slightly more broadly, though, does biology trump gender? I think it depends as for the context, like I said, and that's why I think the transgender athletes should be treated as a separate category than from the DSD athletes. For transgender athletes, genetically, they are no different from the rest of men that compete in the male category. So on that respect, I would agree that biology trumps gender, because the only thing that is changing in that case is gender. In the case of the DSD athletes, we now have, well, the biology is where the debate is.
Yes.
Because each of them has a unique bit of biological characteristic, and then the gender in some cases, well, yeah, it gets so complex then with a DSD athlete. So yeah, so I have some sympathy with the statement biology trumps gender, but only to a point.
Let's hope now that we are able to at least arrive at or go towards the direction of having more scientific research done into this topic. But thank you very much for talking to us, Alun. It's been very illuminating, and it'll really help our readers discover more about this extremely complex subject. Thank you very much again.
Okay, thanks very much.